of who is the next Kyren Williams slash Bucky Irving. Yes, with yesterday's big news out of training camp with Kyren Williams signing a 3-year, $33 million extension for the Rams to be their running back through at least the 2028 season. It got me thinking, Kyren Williams burst onto the scene in the 2023 season. Last year, we had Bucky Irving coming kind of out of nowhere as the lead running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who would be this year's surprise running back to burst out of nowhere? So if we want to go and dive into this, we have to start by looking at the 2023 Los Angeles Rams and see what we were looking at this point of the season. And so in order to do so, I've got the Los Angeles Rams depth chart from 2023. And if we bring that up real quick here, you can see going into the season, Cam Akers, yes, legendary Cam Akers was the primary running back, supported by Kyren Williams and that rookie, Zach Evans. Yes, we all know how high we were on Zach Evans coming out of Ole Miss. Yeah, so we had Cam Akers as the lead back for the Rams heading into that season. Now, Cam Akers, yes, he was a higher draft pick than Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams was a fifth rounder in the 2022 draft. If we all remember, Kyren Williams actually bust onto the scene in his second year. He only had about 40 carries in his rookie season. But Cam Akers suffered some injuries and eventually was let go by the Rams. Akers had some fumbling issues, but going into the 2023 season, there was kind of high hopes that Cam Akers would finally break out for the Rams. So if we want to figure out who the next Kyren Williams and Bucky Irving is, we have to dissect the offenses, right? So the 2023 Rams were going to be a solid offense by most accounts, and same with the 2024 Bucs offense. Both offenses looked very solid heading into this season. So if we're going to figure out the 2025 guy, we got to look at solid offenses, right? But here again, we had a questionable lead back in Cam Akers, and then some decent competition for Kyren with Zach Evans there as well. Now, if we go forward to the 2024 season and look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to see what Bucky Irving had to overcome, let's slide over to that screen here. So here is the Bucs depth chart heading into last season. So, of course, heading into last year, Rachaad White was the top running back for the Buccaneers. He was coming off of a top 10 running back season, good receiver out of the backfield. Many people were pretty high on Rachaad White heading into last season. They were taking him amongst the top 12 running backs, somewhere in there. I think in redrafts he was going anywhere from as high as round 4, 5, 6-ish, somewhere in that range. But most people didn't have Bucky Irving taking over that backfield. They figured the Bucs just drafted him as sort of a third down back, but then, Rachaad White was a good receiving back, so where did that leave Bucky Irving? You also had Chase Edmonds, the veteran, in the mix. And then my pick actually last year, if you go back to videos last year, Sean Tucker was actually my pick as the next Kyren Williams. Sean Tucker was heading into his second season. He was sort of a nobody his first year, which was what Kyren Williams was. Sean Tucker was an undrafted free agent, but he did look pretty decent in his limited work, and he could break tackles. That was one of the things that led to Bucky Irving, and his explosion last year was his broken tackles rate. And then we had a new offensive coordinator as well, right? Liam Cohen coming in to take over the helm for the Buccaneers as offensive coordinator last season. So you see, it wasn't such a muddled backfield that you would think that would lead to such an explosion or a guy being able to take over the backfield. You know, there's a lot of backfields this year that are sort of ambiguous, right? We've got question marks in Jacksonville, who's going to take over that backfield. Dallas, who's going to be the lead dog there, right? So you would think that's where you would look. But in Tampa last year, it didn't really seem, at least at this point in the offseason, like Bucky Irving was going to be the lead dog at any point in the preseason, at least. And so if we want to figure out who the 2025 Kyren Williams or Bucky Irving is going to be, how do we dissect that? So first of all, we want to start with a good offense, right? Both of those guys were able to pull out their monster seasons from being in a good offense, one that could get them double-digit touchdowns, okay? Also, Kyren Williams and Bucky Irving were their lead running backs in college, right? Kyren Williams was pretty much a stud at Notre Dame for a couple of seasons there, and he really just fell down the boards because of his slow 40 time. If you remember, he ran a 4.65 at the combine, so that kind of killed his momentum going into the draft, allowing him to slide down to round 5 for the LA Rams to draft. Pretty much the same story for Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving, he had been splitting the backfield with Jordan James. He still had decent numbers, but it was he was looked at as sort of a committee back, so somebody that would fit into the mix in Tampa. Nobody expected him to be the lead dog, not with Rachaad White coming off of such a strong season, and Rachaad White being a 3-down back. Everybody looked at him that way, and Tampa's offense had momentum. People were thinking it was going to be a solid offense. And then you had Liam Cohen running the show. And so what we want to find for the 2025 Kyren/Bucky is a good offense, a good running back in college, one that could be the lead dog, but doesn't necessarily have to be the lead dog. So I'm going to start by giving you 3 guys who I think a lot of people may be picking right now as the Kyren/Bucky of the 2025 draft. Now, the 2025 class, as opposed to 2022, 2023, and last year's 24 class, the 2025 class is much more loaded with running backs, so this makes dissecting and trying to figure out who this year's Kyren/Bucky is going to be a lot more difficult because you've got a lot more options, okay? So I want to start off with, well, the first guy I'm going to start off with is probably the guy who everybody has, at least going into the draft, they already had ideas that this guy was going to be the Bucky Irving, right, of this year's class. And so let me dig him up here. Where did he go? So I already kind of mentioned their backfield, and where did he go? There we go. All right, so if we're going to start off figuring out who this year's Bucky/Kyren Williams is, we're going to start off down in Jacksonville, and Bashul Tutin. Yes, Bashul Tutin is somebody who the Jaguars' new GM highlighted in his interview process with the owner that he wanted to make sure they drafted him. And Tootin has very similar characteristics to Bucky Irving in his broken tackle ratio. Now he's got a lot more speed than Bucky showed, running a 4.32 at the combine. Bucky Irving just ran a 4.55 40. And Tootin has great breakaway speed. He's in an ambiguous backfield there with, Travis Etienne there, not having such a great season last year. Then you've got Tank Bigsby, who's been coming on lately. And for me, actually, Tank Bigsby is somebody who now he's coming on a lot more than, say, Kyren Williams was in the 2023 season, but kind of similar in the way that he showed a little promise the previous year. Tank Bigsby was good for about 6 quarters last season. The Jacksonville Jaguars really struggled on the ground for the most part. But Tank is a good broken tackles back, and I actually, until his recent rise up the depth chart in Jacksonville, I was thinking Tank was going to be the guy. I did draft a ton of Bashul Tootin in my rookie drafts, so I've got a number of shares of him, so I definitely wouldn't mind if Bashul Tootin ends up being this year's Kyren/Bucky Irving, but I don't think that he fits the profile in as much that his draft stock, he was going in the second round of pretty much every rookie draft. I think he's too high of a profile player to go with, and so I'm not going to take Bashul Tootin as this year's Bucky/Kyren because he's already on the radar. He was on everybody's radar going into the NFL draft with the 4.32 40 he showed at the combine. Everybody was high on Tootin. They were hoping he was going to get second or third round draft capital. So I'm not going with Bashul Tootin. Now, next up as a candidate, I think that everybody likes as well and has liked for a few months now is a fellow running back of Kyren Williams, and that is Jarquez Hunter. So Jarquez Hunter, coming out of Auburn, has good running back vision. He was a three down back at Auburn, a good SEC school. He now joins the backfield with Blake Corum and Kyren Williams. Let's see here. Draft Buzz, Jarquez Hunter was the number 12 running back. Let me slide over to their highlights of Jarquez Hunter. And there we go. There's Jarquez. Okay, so he's 5'9", 204, fits the size profile. Again, both Kyren and Bucky aren't huge running backs. He had a good rushing rating at the 89th percentile, good broken tackle percentile and 91%. But with the new contract for Kyren Williams, that shows a little bit of commitment. The Rams hadn't shown Cam Akers that kind of commitment. The Bucs had not signed Rachaad White off of his big season to a big extension. So I don't know that Jarquez Hunter is going to pull off he's not going to be able to Kyren Williams here. Okay. I like Jarquez Hunter a lot. I've scooped him up in a few leagues, and again, this year's running back class is super loaded, and so it's hard for me to see, barring a Kyren Williams injury, Jarquez Hunter taking over the spot here. So Kyren Williams did need a little bit of help with an injury from Cam Akers to take over the spot. But Bucky Irving last year did not need a Rachaad White injury. So we're looking for talent here to ultimately be the deciding factor. Cam Akers sort of just wrote himself out of town with his fumbling issues and fell out of favor with Sean McVay. And Kyren Williams just was a do-it-all back. Going back to his days at Notre Dame, he played all 3 downs, which Jarquez Hunter sort of fits the profile, but not the guy that I am going with. All right. So next up on the list, we got one more guy who's gotten a little hype lately, and he's got a good offense. And this is going to be Jaden Blue from the Dallas Cowboys. Jaden Blue was a 2-down back at Texas. I'm not going to call him a 3-down back. He definitely was in on 3rd downs, but then he split time there as well. And he's got a good 40 time. As I mentioned, good receiving back. The problem here in Dallas, for me at least, is that I see the Cowboys looking at one of their veterans in Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders, who has been taking charge in that backfield lately until his injury yesterday. Now, his injury I don't think is going to keep him out of the lineup week 1. But Miles Sanders showing up in camp with a chip on his shoulder. He talked about wanting to beat on the Eagles. He gets to play them twice a year now, being a Cowboy. And so that chip has really risen Miles Sanders up the chart for the Cowboys. I think that if he's ready week 1, he could be the starter. Otherwise, they're going to lean towards Javonte Williams. I just don't see Jaden Blue being able to be, a full-time back and being a guy that could get 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. So those are 3 guys that I like this year in rookies. Jarquez Hunter, Bashul Tutin, and Jaden Blue, but I'm not going to take those guys as my Bucky / Kyren Williams. So who am I going with then? Well, we've got a guy who's been sort of flying under the radar. There's been a little bit of camp negativity for this team's backfield. It is a solid offense, one that underperformed last season, which led to their offensive coordinator being fired. And that would be, and I wish I had my boy Matt English on here, but that would be, if you look at the depth chart here, I'm going to bring up the depth chart first. I'm going to leave you in suspense for a minute. Yes, the Houston Texans. And last year, Bobby Slowick couldn't get it done. They brought in Nick Caley, who is from the Rams tree. He had been their passing game coordinator and tight ends coach. And so Nick Caley comes aboard, and I am going with Woody Marks as my Kyren Williams / Bucky Irving of the 2025 season. Let's bring old Woody up here and show you some of the numbers for Woody Marks. Okay, so Woody Marks was a super senior. He went 4 years to Mississippi State and then transferred to USC for his final year. And the key that I see for this happening, if you looked at the depth chart for the Houston Texans there, they don't even have Woody Marks listed. They have Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, Dameon Pierce, and Dare Ogumabawale. Yes. So where does Woody Marks fit in, and how is he going to pull this off? Well, we start off with Joe Mixon. We've got an injury already. Big, bad foot injury. Joe Mixon, a few years ago, had a Liz Frank injury that put him out for that season. He's been banged up just about every year, missing 3-4 games, and I'm really, really not trusting Joe Mixon in redraft. I'm avoiding him as much as possible. Then you've got Nick Chubb. Hasn't looked great in camp so far. He's coming back from that nasty knee injury. And so I'm not trusting Nick Chubb either. Then who do you got? Dameon Pierce? I mean, Dameon Pierce, he did well his rookie season, surpassing pretty much everybody's expectations, but he's not a 3-down back. And then special teamer / kicker, Dare Ogunbowale. Yes. So that leaves Woody Marks. And if we bring up Woody Marks' stats from college here, I'll read them off to you. Woody Marks, his college stats, again, he played 5 years, first 4 years at Mississippi State, didn't even get to 600 yards rushing any of those seasons, but he did have an 80 catch season in his sophomore year. He ended up with 60 his freshman year, so 140, 50 his junior year. So we're already well over 200 catches for his career at Mississippi State, then transferred to USC and Lincoln Riley's zone blocking scheme, and where he put up just under 200 rushing attempts, just under 1,200 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns, then added 47 catches, 320 yards through the air. So he finished his college career as a whole with for over 4,500 total yards and 36 touchdowns. This is a do-it-all back. He is used to the zone blocking scheme that Nick Caley now brings over from the Rams to the Texans. And this is an ideal situation for somebody to come out of nowhere and burst onto the scene. Also, what I like here is that there's, yes, ambiguity in the backfield. And at the same token, could you see Nick Chubb start the season as the first and second down back? Sure. But Woody Marks will mix in on third down for sure. That's what they drafted him for. They moved up into the 4th round to grab this guy. They like him. Okay? They brought him in for a reason. You have a new offensive coordinator. I just don't see the Texans, if they really want to move forward and get into one of the top 3 teams in the AFC. I don't see them leaning on Nick Chubb to get that done, right? They want to find their guy, and Woody Marks could be that guy this year. So there you have it. My Kyren Williams / Bucky Irving. No, it's not Bashul Tootin, who I'm sure most of you thought I was going to go with based on me having 9+ shares of Bashul Tootin. Yes, I would love to see it happen and him get it done, but I wanted to dig a little deeper. I'm going with Woody Marks and that zone blocking scheme with Nick Caley, the new offensive coordinator in Houston. I think Woody Marks and his great value, you can still get him super cheap. If you have rookie drafts coming up, you can get him in the 4th round of your rookie drafts. If you have a redraft coming up, you can probably get him with one of your last picks. Most people are leaning towards taking Nick Chubb right now for the Texans. Some of your amateurs in your redrafts are probably still going to draft Joe Mixon pretty high. I think Woody Marks is your Kyren Williams / Bucky Irving of the 2025 season. Please smash the like and subscribe for more great content from the Birdhouse Dynasty Show. And remember, never stop working.